Welcome, everybody. It's time again for another episode of Sales Pipeline, the only show that lets you grab your board and surf along as we take a look at the latest and greatest ideas and insights and rumors, and with our host, Matt Heinz, who's coming to us from Washington, D.C. today here.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing, maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but I have to as a journalist. You're a journalism major. I'm a journalist here at OC Talk Radio. I have to have you address the rumor that you're in Washington to secretly meet with the president, become his new economic advisor.
Well, I was going to ask you, because you mentioned rumors that you were going to share. I don't know if apparently that's the rumor. No, that's not why I'm here, but thanks for asking. Okay. I am coming to you live from the business center of the Hilton Garden Inn here, just a couple blocks from the White House.
There you go.
Was in town for an event with Marketo that we just wrapped up earlier today, and heading back home a little later tonight, back to the beautiful Pacific Northwest, but not before we get another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio in the book. So thanks, everyone, very much for joining us today. We are here live every Thursday at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. The 2:30 Eastern, a little more relevant to me today. If you're joining us live, thank you so much. We got an amazing live audience that we actually do have, Paul, every week. They listen to us live. It's amazing.
I know, and they want to know answers, so they tune in to hear about the latest.
They're looking for rumors. We're going to have answers today for sure. For those of you that are joining us from the podcast, thank you for subscribing. You can get us at the Google Play and the iTunes Store. And every episode of Sales Pipeline Radio, past, present, and future, is available at salespipelineradio.com. Every week we are featuring some of the best and brightest minds in B2B sales and marketing, and today is no different. I'm really, really excited to finally get on the show. Manny Medina, he is the founder and CEO of Outreach.io, and we're going to be talking about sales and technology and moving from big companies to startups and a lot of great stuff. So, Manny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. We're happy to have you back here in the Pacific Northwest. It's 40 degrees and raining, as it should be, in March.
Oh, my gosh. From what I understand, once I get back starting, I think, Friday night into the weekend, we're supposed to have like mid-60s weather, and March at our house is Garden Infrastructure Month. This is the time when we're starting to build stuff out. We got spring training on the radio. It's just it's a good time to be had, and a good time to start to get outside a little bit more. But I want to talk a little more about what you guys are doing. Manny is running a company called Outreach. They are one of the fastest growing companies in sales technology. And Manny, maybe give people that aren't familiar with Outreach, tell them what Outreach is and what problems you guys solve for sales professionals.
Absolutely. So Outreach is a sales engagement platform, and what that means is that your rep needs to perform activities every day that includes reaching out to prospects, following up, booking appointments, and moving in through the pipeline. For Outreach SaaS, it gives you a set of action tools that the rep can execute really quickly so they can actually book more meetings. So imagine a rep that needs to make a few phone calls and then follow up with an email and then follow up with another phone call. Outreach puts a lot of that automation in place so that the rep doesn't have to follow up on his own, or he is actually very diligent in actually executing those follow-ups and getting through his pipeline and booking those meetings. So Outreach gets you about 30% meeting lift for any sales organizations that uses Outreach.
And just full disclosure, we're fans of Outreach. We've got clients using Outreach. We actually use Outreach now ourselves internally, and I can tell you just firsthand, even though we have a very small install of Outreach, given our size of our company, have been very happy with just the efficiency it's been able to generate for us. And I'm curious, Manny, I mean, when you graduated from business school, you spent 10 years working in a combination of Amazon and Microsoft, and this is what you chose to do after that. And so I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to move from Microsoft into a startup environment, but why this problem? What drove you to this problem to solve with a startup as your first foray out of sort of enterprise technology?
So we had a previous startup that was in the recruiting space, and when that got a little bit of funding, and we were moving slowly into the right and up in terms of revenue generation, but it wasn't fast enough, and we were running out of cash. So there came a point in our life that happened sometime in the third quarter of 2014. But we were staring at our bank account, and we only had about 2 months of cash left. So at that point, we had a choice to make. Either we go all out and figure out a way to get money back into the bank, or we prepare shutdown. So we decided to go build a tool that would allow us to sell our way out of this problem. Now, the 4 co-founders of Outreach are all engineers and designers. So we decided that we're going to go and use our engineering and design chops to generate more meetings. Because at the end of the day, that's a precursor for a sale. It's a meeting. So if we can generate more meetings, we feel pretty sure that we can dig our way out of the problem and get cash again. So we built a tool that essentially did two things. One of them was it created a quick personalization window so that we can send a lot of emails out that had a one-liner opener, and that alone would categorize the whole email as a personalized email. So imagine that the two windows, one of which has compose for you to write something up, and the other one that has every single aspect of that individual's life, like a LinkedIn address, a Facebook, a Google Plus account, whatever you needed to sort of find some relevancy in that line that you're about to write and write it quickly so that we can crank out through personalized emails quickly. The second piece that Outreach did originally, or that we did originally before we founded Outreach, was then that email will get followed up, meaning we will look into the mailbox looking for replies, and if it didn't reply, it will follow up. So we used that to generate meetings, and we had a small team of about 2 salespeople. And that tool allowed us to book about 10 meetings per rep per day. So very quickly we went from floundering to be swimming in meetings. Now the problem was that as we were getting into those meetings, and we were selling recruiting services, and we were offering sort of like a very high response rate that we'd had for candidates and using that candidate pipeline to sell to companies, people were not interested in our candidate pipeline. They were interested in the tool that got us into that meeting and the tool that we're getting the candidate pipeline generated. So that's sort of the aha moment after 10 of those or 15 of those. We realized that the market was not really buying our recruiting product, but they really wanted to buy that pipeline generation product. So we pivoted the company, and we launched Outreach for sales, and the rest is history.
That is such a good story. We're talking to Manny Medina. He's the CEO and founder of Outreach, a fantastic sales enablement and sales engagement and acceleration platform. And I have to ask, in hindsight, obviously, like a good move, making that pivot into a business that clearly is in the right place at the right time and succeeding and growing. And I think, the origins of Slack, which many of us use for internal operations, has a very similar origin story. I think it was a design firm that was doing design work and created a tool to communicate with each other internally and realized their clients had a need for it. So in hindsight, great pivot. How difficult was it to recognize the need for the pivot in that moment? I don't want you to give away things that you may not want to make public, but I'm just curious, discussions internally, was it a difficult decision? Was it a scary decision at the time to go from what you knew that you were selling to something that was really very completely different?
Oh, it was an incredibly difficult decision. When we realized that we were generating a lot of meetings, I was getting this feedback, but cash was not showing up in the bank, and my co-founders started to freak out. Yeah. And there was this one call I remember taking from talking to a customer. I talked to a customer, went back to my car. I was in San Francisco, and called my co-founder saying how great this went and how this could turn into a business. And they were like, yeah, about that. We are inventorying everything, and we're about to put it on eBay. And that was sort of the crucial moment where I had to put on my pitch hat again and pitch my own team about the viability of this new idea. And that was one of the hardest things I had to do in my life, because I had to convince them that even though we didn't have any cash, and even though we have to put a ton of effort into turning this into a forward-facing product, because the previous product was not customer-facing yet, so that the biggest asset that we really had was a group of 4 very talented individuals with a great idea in an enormous market. And that is a dream come true for any investor. We just needed to go and execute. Yeah. And that was sort of the genesis of the turnaround. But it was hard for a little bit because, then I have to go and actually get some money from investors again. I'm telling them that, remember that thing that we were doing before? Forget about that. We're doing this other thing. And it took a little bit for that to get going. But it was incredibly hard.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I think that's, you're opening up the kimono a little bit, things that not everyone sort of thinks about or has to experience, but I appreciate you sharing that. And, for those of you listening that haven't read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, it's he shares a lot of stories similar to that where, sometimes in hindsight, you're like, wow, that business did really well, and look at all these great successes and great choices. But some of those decisions are in the moment not exactly easy, and the reality of, your ambitions versus the cash in the bank that can allow you to do some of those things is, that's one of many hard thing about hard things. Talk a little bit about, on an extension of that, going from a big environment like a Microsoft. I mean, you were there for 10 years, running a bunch of different, organizations. How was it? What was it like transitioning from a company that's big, that's known with resources, to really starting over and starting from scratch in a startup? Was that a challenging transition? And what are some of the keys you'd recommend for other people that may be thinking about making that transition to be successful as well?
That's a great question, Matt. I think the biggest transition pain that I had going from Microsoft to my own company was the fact that at any company of any size that has been around for a while, you have a brand name. Even if your brand name is not big, Microsoft's brand name was like one of the top 5 brands in the world. So there was no meeting that people wouldn't take with me. There was no, like I was selling Windows Phone, right, to carriers, and anybody would, like, I would email anybody or call anybody, and they would take my meeting. So, and the second, that was not the case at Outreach. And actually, that's the reason why we invented Outreach, because you have to follow up. You have to find a way to get through the door. You have to try many different people and avenues within the account to actually get a crack, open the door a crack so that you can get in. And that was the hardest thing. That was a lot of humble pie that I had to eat there. The second piece was that when you're at a big company that is doing relatively well, you are insulated from the vagaries of the market and the vagaries of failure. And failure that can kill you. And Microsoft, Microsoft can buy a company worth $200 million, burn it to the ground, and move right on. We don't have that kind of luxury. So we have to be right a lot more than we have to be wrong. And when you come out of Microsoft, you come out thinking, or out of Amazon or any big company, you come out thinking that you're never wrong because you've seen success around you the entire time. And when you go into a startup, failure becomes a daily thing. And you have to get used to it and sort of learning how to fail fast, how to fail smart, how to learn from the failure and get back up again, use the failure to your advantage. That was the biggest learning and biggest transitioning point of me coming out of Microsoft into our own environment of a startup.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, someone told me once that they'd spent a lot of time at Microsoft and went into a startup, and they said that one of the biggest differences is when you're in a big company, you can spend more time focused internally, and you've got enough gravity momentum in the business. Sometimes that works out. When you're at a small company, when you're starting from scratch, you have to focus externally, and your decisions all carry more weight. And I think that knowing that and making that transition can be a challenge for some folks. Well, hey, we're gonna have to take a quick break here, pay some bills. We'll be back with more with Manny Medina. He's the CEO and founder of Outreach. We're going to be talking a little more about sales technology and understanding when it helps, when it hurts. Talk about growing a business rapidly with integrity and keeping your values intact and much more. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back on Sales Pipeline Radio.
In a world where the speed of innovation and change in B2B marketing has never been greater, the only thing bigger is the need for clarity, for a blueprint, for a guide to what's really working. And how about a way to apply it specifically today to increase sales pipeline growth, velocity, and most of all, conversion? That's what you'll find in the Modern Marketer's Field Guide. And amazingly, you can download it for free. HeinzMarketing.com, just like it sounds, HeinzMarketing. It encompasses the entire sales and marketing cycle, but in quick bursts with lots of specific, actionable ideas, strategies, tactics you can put to work right away, like today. The loaded table of contents helps you narrow in and tackle a problem. And it's something you can come back to over and over again as a reference guide. Why not download your free copy of the Modern Marketer's Field Guide? It's free. HeinzMarketing.com, just like it sounds. HEINZ Marketing.com. All right, back to Matt and his guest from deep within the belly of the beast, inside the Beltway.
Inside the Beltway, the belly of the beast. It is a nice day here, but freezing as I look out the window and see everyone walking by with their stocking caps. It may be spring training, it may be warmer weather somewhere, but definitely not here, not yet. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Coming back to Sales Pipeline Radio. We have some great guests coming up over the next couple weeks. Next week, we will have Jonah Kai Hancock. He is the Vice President of Marketing at Tune, a great little startup in Seattle. We're going to be talking about marketing technology and a little bit of account-based marketing. They have They're one of the most aggressive adopters of sales and marketing technology that we know, and they've got a pretty interesting framework for how they not only evaluate technology but also ensure its success inside organizations. So excited to have Jonah Kai. And then following week, we have Allie McPhee. She is the founder and CEO of a company called Stick. She is integrally involved in their sales process. She is also an improv specialist. She's taking classes and doing a lot of improv work. So we've been talking about the intersection of improv, startup sales, and the role of improv skills in the sales process as well. So much more coming up on the next couple of weeks of Sales Pipeline Radio. More today with Manny Medina. He's the CEO of Outreach. And full disclosure, we are a Outreach user. We are a happy Outreach user. It's amazing how quickly, once we got it on board and got it integrated, it's amazing how quickly it just became part of our process and part of the way we're sort of helping to get more engagement from prospects and as well as from customers and partners. It's been fantastic. I think a lot of people, Manny, look at technology and they see the opportunity with a lot of these tools, but I've also seen people that have increasingly indicated a little bit of a backlash on technology, wondering if some of it can be counterproductive. If there's some technology that people adopt that actually, because of what it takes to use that technology is counterproductive to the results. What should companies be looking for? What should sales leaders be looking for in platforms to ensure they're getting results and ensure that it's additive to their productivity versus negative?
That's a great question. My advice to sales leaders out there is that they should have a process in place. They should have a playbook that has some degree of adoption and understanding throughout the organization before they start getting heavy on technology. Where we see technology go sideways is when they bring us in or they bring whatever vendor in, and without knowing what they want to accomplish with it. What is that they're looking to lift? What is that they're looking to stop doing? What is that they're looking to optimize? And in the context of what is framework. So pick your framework. So for instance, we recently did some training with Commando the messaging from Force Management. And now that gave us a framework for us to start deploying our assets all the way from product into our product marketing team, into our enablement team, into our sales team, and et cetera. And that at least puts a little bit of guardrails into how we operate. The same thing should be done with any organization, be that challenger or be that some private coaching, whatever you need to sort of create the persona that you're going after, how they like to be communicated, what experiments you're going to run, and how are you going to sort of get to that customer needs to be in place before you bring any technology partner. The technology is just going to put a rocket booster to your current process. It's not going to make the process. It's not going to teach them anything. What it's going to do is going to make them faster and better at what they're already doing. And that's sort of the main thing. The second thing is that whatever tool you buy, whatever sort of platform you decide to adopt, make sure that it has some component, some learning component, meaning it has so that it presents a way for you and your management team to learn from the actions that your team is taking. Meaning, if the tool is helping you do X, Y, or Z better, phone calls better, emails better, or asset management better, or document management, or closing pipeline, whatever it is, make sure that you can measure different plays within that framework, so that you are constantly improving. And make sure that you spend time understanding, what is that you're doing and why is that you're doing it. One of the most common mistakes that I see sales operations teams do, or sales teams do, is that they come in with a very heavy belief, it's kind of like a doctrinal or religious belief about a particular thing that they have to do because the customers like to be communicated. And it's not until you test it against something else that you don't learn. So the most important thing is that your team is always learning, is always testing, is always finding out what way your persona likes to be sold, and adopting that and moving right on. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer and a great framework. And we will certainly continue to share this up on SalesPipelineRadio.com as well as a great way to think about technology usage and really evaluating those tools and how they can be successful for you moving forward. Got just a few more minutes here with Manny Medina, the CEO of Outreach, and definitely encourage you to check out outreach.io. Some great resources up there. They've got a fantastic blog and a lot of other resources. And if you go there right now, you are very likely to see a video and a promotion for Unleash. Last year, kind of out of the blue, Manny, I mean, you guys created one of the most buzzed about sales conferences of the year. I was not able to make it last year, but I have yet to talk to someone that wasn't just blown away by the quality of the conference. And it's coming up again in May. I think it's May 6th through 9th, 2018, down in San Diego. talk a little bit about what people can expect from the conference this year, and who are the roles, who are the people that should be checking this out and getting registered.
That's another great question. So let me tell you a little bit about the story of Unleash. So Unleash was a response to a need to have a sales conference where a sales professional, can come and be inspired and be energized and learn something and take that home. We didn't see in the market, other than, the big sort of affairs with booths and vendors, we didn't see in the market something that fulfilled that need, and we decided to go ahead and fill it. As you know, this company has a few important elements from the Tony Robbins organization, and that helps us sort of hone in on what is our persona going to be in a conference, right? What is that we want to deliver? How do we want to make people feel? So this year, the theme is going to be peak excellence, and that is, how do you show up every day at peak excellence at your job, and how do you perform as a rep? Your job is hard. You get told no many times. Your commit number may not be the number that you're coming through with. How do you get back on your feet and sort of get back into that peak excellence mindset? And peak excellence, covers many things. It's your tooling, your attitude, your mindset, your preparation, your training. All that comes together in one conference, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And the easiest way is just to go to unleash.outreach.io and register for the event. It's going to be mind blowing. So as you know, we have signed up the Navy SEALs to come into training every morning, and we have signed up Jocko Willink, the author of Extreme Ownership, to come and give us a talk. And this is mixed in with a new outreach releases, such as Outreach Amplify, our new machine learning platform, and a number of other things that it's just going to be bigger, badder at than last year.
I love it. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to being there with you guys this year, and it sounds like you guys have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So definitely check out unleash.outreach.io, or just go to the outreach.io homepage and you can find more information, register there. You're talking about sort of peak mindset. I know this is something that that bleeds over into your organization as well, and you guys have grown very quickly, taken advantage of the market opportunity. But I know that with that rapid growth, it's been important for you to grow with integrity and to grow with with values and maintaining a good culture. Talk a little bit about what it takes to build and maintain an ideal culture in the midst of aggressive growth. That isn't always an easy thing.
No, absolutely, and actually that is the first thing that breaks with rapid growth, if you don't mind it. And a couple of things that I think we did right is that we gather our early team back when we were about 50 people, and we gather as many of people as we could into our room, and we decided to sort of list what are the core values of this company, what are we going to stand for, who are we going to be. And you would think that something comes from the founders, but it didn't come from the founders. It came from everybody. And the funny thing is that it was a quick exercise. It took about 2 hours to come up with 5 core values, the initial 5 core values that we came up with. And after that, what happens is that those core values need to be discussed, need to be tested, need to be challenged. And that needs to be a point of conversation at all times. So every time that we get into an all hands, there's always a question around the core value, and that initiates a conversation across the company on what does that mean. So, for instance, one of our core values is grit. But grit, sounds great, and it sounds like something you would do when you're passionate about a long-term goal and you go after it on a regular basis with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. But grit can also break things, can also, drive the wrong behavior. So, for instance, many times our support team or a customer success team will do something that is on the platform that is not quite right, but it solves the customer problem by gritting it out. Yeah. And instead of sort of like taking that, the problem statement and bringing it back to our product so we can actually go ahead and solve it, grit can also sort of, cut the other way. But recognizing, when a cultural or, when a core point of view sort of cuts both ways is when that point becomes real. When it starts being dogmatic and something that the CEO says all the time so that you can feel good about yourself, but when you actually go and do it. So, for instance, another core value for us is diversity. But we don't just talk about it; we go and measure it. And then we talk about the company of how many diverse candidates are we bringing into the pipeline, and are we feeling good about that pipeline? How many diverse candidates do we have on seat? How many diverse candidates are doing well? How many diverse candidates are in management? So having women and people of color and making sure those people are being successful here, are being recruited, and are being placed, that's how you actually live the core value of diversity. So that's sort of the bottom line, is that for you to really live the core value, you have to test it, you have to put it in front, you have to discuss it, you have to sometimes even disagree with it, and measure it, most importantly.
I love it. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today. We're going to have to wrap up here today's episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. I want to thank our guest, Manny Medina. He's the CEO of Outreach. Learn more about him, the company, the conference, Unleash at outreach.io. We will have a recording of this episode on demand at salespipelineradio.com in the next couple of days if you want to listen to this again. Appreciate the candor and the openness for a diverse set of topics today. So thanks again to Manny. We will see you all here next week, again live, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern, with Jonakai Hancock for Tune. We talk about marketing technology and a framework for evaluating the success of technology in your stack moving forward. For today, for my great producer, Paul, this is Matt Heinz. Thanks so much for joining us. Sales Pipeline Radio.
You've been riding along on the Sales Pipeline from your good friends at Heinz Marketing on the Funnel Radio channel for at-work listeners like you.